All right, welcome. And today we're going to be having a conversation about soft skills in general, how they pertain to our lives, and what we've learned through our experiences. The topics will range from organization and time management to communication, dealing with failures, and finally acquiring new soft skills. So we'll begin by introducing ourselves. My name is Ben. I am a student at the University of Ottawa. I'm studying statistics. David, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm David, uOttawa as well, and like Ben, I am studying sort of statistics. It's called financial mathematics, but we basically cover the same stuff. And what about you, Junior?
So my name is Junior. I study Master of Finances at uOttawa. Yeah, fourth year.
Okay, excellent. We're almost done then. So let's move right into our very first question, which is directed at you, David. How do you manage your time, and how has COVID affected your time management skills?
Well, while we're at university, I've fully come to terms with the fact that I'm a habitual procrastinator. It's something that I've helped to improve throughout my degree, but it's still there. It never quite leaves you. You just sort of learn how to deal with it a little bit better and suppress it. During COVID, it's especially present because the environment in which we manage our time has changed. The organization itself, the structure has shifted. University itself is a structure in which you have these classes. You always have to get to it, and you manage your time around them. And all around the midterms, it's a very physical thing. And now that it's gone online, you get to manage your time in ways that you never could have before. And it's sort of, some people go the right way, some people go the wrong way with it. They overdo it or they underdo it. And yeah, it's really interesting to be able to have that much control over your time. And yeah, basically its presence is always there. And the importance of time management is also dependent on your environment. It's quite different in school versus work. And that's something I'm still sort of learning on the go as to how important it is to strictly organize yourself at work versus at school.
Yeah, and jumping on what you just said, I think, especially with school this semester and the previous one, it was interesting because like there's certain downsides and certain pros and cons when it comes to time management in the COVID era. Like I noticed it's a lot easier to watch videos, lectures at your pace when you want, and you can watch them however many times you want, which is great. But at the same time, I find it a lot harder now to distinguish between when I should and shouldn't be working. Because like before, you can go to the library and you have those habits that kind of kick in, and all of a sudden you're doing your work, and when you go home, it's time to relax. But when you're always at home or in your apartment, in your bedroom, it starts to become difficult. When do I stop working? When do I start living a little bit?
Yeah, that's true.
And so I found it challenging in COVID to really maintain the time management skills. So again, there's some pros and cons. But what about you, Junior? What exactly?
Well, I procrastinate as well a lot. Ever since I started school, I procrastinate. So like what I do generally is that I develop this habit. Like sometimes when I study or in my project, like I make sure I maximize what I can do with the little amount of time I have, because I don't know if later I'll be procrastinating. So like every time I do something, I make sure like I maximize what I will do or go above my expectation in that amount of time. So that later I'm like, okay, I'll catch up later if I procrastinate. So that is generally what I do, like just to make sure I cope with my procrastination habit.
Okay, so you spread it out over time.
I don't spread it out. Or like when I do something, I have to do it like 1000%. Later, I'll procrastinate. It's just really hard.
Yeah, those like specialized strategies to deal with time management. That's the way to go. Like one thing I noticed at school is I always study so much better in like a busy desk in the middle of a hallway at school than in my own quiet room at home.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Over there, everyone expects you to study, and that's what you do. Because what else would you do? Just look around. But at home, there's no rules. And there's opportunities to slack off.
Yeah, COVID has certainly made it tedious. It's already difficult now. It's extra difficult. But okay, let's move on to our second question then. And this one's about communication skills. So how have good or bad communication skills affected you? If you have an example of something bad that's happened, how did you improve it? And if you have an example of something good, could you just tell us, what it is? Junior, if you want to start this one.
Well, I think that good communication is pertinent for anything in life, especially projects. When you have good communication in your team, you are able to do things faster, respect everything, schedules. Like things go much faster in a group with good communication than one without communication. For example,
you're leveraging other people's skills. That makes sense.
For example, in my group, like to be honest, we have a little difficulties like with communication. So, like for example, when I have an issue, right, and I want to communicate, sometimes I don't feel comfortable about communicating about my issue because like really have collaboration issues. So which leads to me taking more time in my issue than if we had two brains doing it. So that's why I think like communication is really important for group work and generally anything in life. Communication is key.
That it makes sense. I mean, a recent example that I found to be really challenging was the assignment that we did in consulting, wherein we're creating a blog post. I found it really challenging to be able to express myself, something that's inherently technical, something that I'm really passionate about, and I care about. I'm interested in it, right? So I study it and I'm excited about it, and it's hard to boil it down and explain it to different audiences. It's a real challenge, and so I find that communication is perhaps one of the most important tools in one's arsenal when it comes to not just working with people, but being able to express yourself in the first place, right? So if David, you have something to add to that?
No, I totally agree that it's just so important because most people, they draw their impressions rather quickly. They don't have patience, and so it doesn't matter what you worked on, how hard you worked on it, how cool it is. If you can't communicate it well, that's the end product. That's all that matters at the end of the day, is how well others are able to understand what you did. And it's tough. And when it comes to groups, it's the amount of liability contributes to the amount of communication. Inversely, basically, I found like the bigger the group, the less liability, the less I'm drawn to initiate things in the group, the less I care almost about like really going for it.
That's where leadership skills really come in, right? Because it's one thing to have a really big group, but everyone can have like various specializations, and so being able to sift through that and figure out how to work together, it's a tough challenge. Like it's not just a question of communicating effectively, it's being able to communicate with each other. And when you come from different backgrounds, for example, it can be a challenge to do that, right? I know just from personal traveling experiences, there are different business etiquettes all over the world. And so, communication, I think it is not just talking to people, expressing yourself, it's also how you present yourself and how you go about treating the mannerisms. So it's actually a very, very difficult skill to master. Certainly not one that you can do without a lot of experience. I think that's something that you mentioned earlier, David. A lot of these things play into experience and time. So if does anyone have anything to add about communication?
No,
I think we're all in agreement that we should just be doing more of it.
Okay, wonderful. Well, then let's go on to what I think is the most juicy question. It's super interesting. How do you deal with failure? And can you give me an example of a time you failed? It doesn't have to be spectacular, but like what did you do to move on? We'll start with you, David.
Yeah, sure. Failures. It plays a huge role in our lives as students. I mean, it's always just two steps away, and that's a good thing in my opinion. And the consulting course really made us face it as well. And failure, you realize, is not something that you should be afraid of, and it's not something that is always as present as it might seem. Most things you cannot do to perfection, strictly because of the resources that you have to give up such as time and just the costs associated with not being able to do anything else due to your fear of failing. And it's something you have to let go of, and also be aware of that everything has its limitations. And so when do you call it a day with whatever project you're on to? And failures are good too in school, and so because they're always pretty low stakes, and coming across multiple small failures, it prepares you for a big one. It helps you avoid the bigger ones that matter, and really just,
or at least mitigate,
gets you in the zone. Exactly. Yeah. It comes down to experience once again, sort of.
And so you just a follow-up question to you. You mentioned like, you know, not doing something to perfection, or not being able to do that. Where exactly do you draw the line? When is perfect not perfect for you? Like when you overextend yourself and other things start to suffer? Like where exactly is the line?
Yeah, basically you got it there. I think the definition of perfect and failure and so on, it's a personal thing. It's whatever you want it to be. So if you're doing a project, for example, and you had a goal of learning a certain amount of the subject or the software you were using, you wanted to get a certain grade in school for that. You wanted to dedicate a certain amount of time and effort to it, but you also want to dedicate time to other things. And sort of when everything is sort of matched in your equation, when you've achieved more or less what you would be reasonably okay with, and it starts taking away from the other things because there's a marginal rate of return that's really decreasing for the amount of effort you're putting in, that's when I believe you should consider at least calling it a day and accepting the fact that you're not getting 100. That's that.
Yeah, that makes sense. As long as, you know, perfect is not always something that we can reach. What about you, Junior? Can you give me an example?
I totally agree with what David said. I will just help in giving an example. So I had this personal project in the course, quantitative analysis. So I had to change the scope of my project because I thought I could do it. You know, every time I realized I had difficulties collecting all the data, so I had to change the scope from here to here. So I saw it as a failure. I was really like disappointed in myself. But in the end, from what I could do from changing the scope of my project, I realized it was really much better. I could like do like all the project 100% complete. So in the end, I was really proud of what I could do. And for me to realize that I could not do the project before even the deadline, I realized that like it's really important like to be able to do that. So I feel like I developed some skill with that.
Right. So you learn from failure.
Yeah, I learned from the failure.
Yeah. Okay. And where exactly do you draw the line? Right. Like I asked David, where do you draw the line on what's perfect? Like how do you know when to stop?
Well, when to stop, like generally I use the scope of like, let's say in school there's a scope like what you must reach, you know. So I honestly would like to have like all the scope, you know, like respect everything, get everything on that. But sometimes it is not really possible. So like let's say it's 100%. So of the scope. So I just tell myself, okay, first of all, just get 70% of the scope, you know. So I push myself to getting 70%. So when I reach the 70%, I'm like, okay, you're at 70% now. Maybe move to 80% of the scope. Yeah. Okay. So that's how I push myself, like as a means like to motivate me and not to frustrate me in the long term. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And to add on to that, personally, when it comes to failure, I really like the post-mortem model, right? So being able to kind of decompose what it is that you did, what decisions you made at key points, and figure out what went wrong and how to avoid that. So I think that kind of plays into the general theme here. That is, when it comes to failure, you can always at the very least say that you got something out of it. But yeah, you know, overstretching yourself, it's tough because you really want to do well. You want to give the perfect result, whatever that is. And so, you know, often enough, just knowing when to to say enough is enough is it's a real challenge, and it's something that comes with experience. But I think we covered the topic pretty well. So let's move on to our last topic, which is the acquisition of new soft skills. So if David or Junior, whoever wants to jump in, David, if you want to start there.
Yeah, sure. Well, soft skills, the good thing is that they're sort of everywhere. You can grab them wherever you want them. The problem is more that most of the time we don't want to grab them just because we all prefer to stay in our shells. And they're equally as important, I think, or maybe more important than the harder skills. And as math kids, we're passionate about the harder skills. We learn the stuff that most people don't. And we spend a great amount of time focusing on that. And we get really good at one thing, but it's almost worthless.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we don't learn all the rest of the stuff that anyone can learn. And really the only way, I think, outside of reading some, soft skill books or something, is just through experience. You got to go out, do some networking events. They're awkward. You get better. Personally, I got a lot from work experience. I spent a lot of years as a camp counselor. Tons of soft skills. They're kids. They're hard to deal with. So you learn how to negotiate with them, and sort of you get these like negotiating skills after a while dealing with these kids. That maybe that takes you somewhere further in your career later on. It transitions, and that's where I'm on that. I think experience is the greatest factor there.
Yeah, I definitely echo that sentiment in the sense that immersion is, at least for me, has been the most effective way of gaining new soft skills. If you want to learn to present, you should put yourself in a scenario where you're presenting a lot. And I managed to do that by entering in competitions and by actually taking a course offered at the University of Ottawa. It's business communication skills. So I'm thoroughly in the camp of immersion, right? Whether it's learning a new language or a new soft skill, it's all about experience. And it is like you said, it's often overlooked, and it certainly is not something that anyone should do, because being able to communicate, being responsible, being able to solve problems, decisive, flexible, these sorts of things are practiced, and they come with experience in the real world. So Junior, if you'd like to add to that.
Well, I totally agree with what the two of you said, because soft skills, unlike hard skills, like hard skills you might like maths, you can study it and go to school and have like 100%. But soft skills, you can do it at home, but in real life, it's totally different thing. So to be able to like develop your soft skills, you have to apply it, you have to immerse and merge yourself to like really put yourself in a situation where you have to talk to people and communicate. That's the only way you can improve on your soft skills. So like I totally agree with what the two of you say.
Do you have an example just from your personal experiences, Junior?
Well, for example, me, I am a really close person. I don't really like express myself a lot. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I use my, like, when I have difficulties or when I fail or when I'm blocked, I force myself, right? So like, okay, Junior, you're blocked. You have to go out and search for the help you need. Meet someone that knows what you need. Talk to the person, and So that is a way for me to like develop my communication skills, because after the help, I can come back to the person, like get some more knowledge, talk with the person, and maybe improve on my communication skills and on myself. So like, So when those situations happen, I'm like, okay, it's time, go and get it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's. I think then we're all on board the immersion ship, so to speak. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I think that was a really interesting talk. Thank you very much for your time. This was a conversation on soft skills.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks.